What's up YouTube? Colin here, the Wild CEO. Today's video is all about the problem with all diet recommendations and the problem with talking about diets and really nutrition the way most people do it. Most people talk about it the wrong way. And most books and recommendations and names and categories, it's always a us versus them. It's about what makes us different. A lot of it's branding and marketing. A lot of it's based on trying to sell products or get clicks. There's a lot of confusion, there's a lot of nonsense, and there's a lot of profit to be made by these individuals or companies making recommendations, right? Like entire product lines are made. Weight Watchers has an entire line of products, or some new ones that are coming out that are around keto, for example, or, and there's some better than others, whatever, but there's a lot of junk food there was paleo junk food for a while. There's keto junk food. So let's unpack what some of the problems are with talking about diets and nutrition in general, and then really, I want to arm you with a better way to think about it. Like, there is so much garbage in this space, and there's so much confusion, and it really hurts people. Like, it legitimately hurts people, and it hurts children, because those people hear these things and make changes in their lifestyle that may or may not be better for them, and then they do the same thing for their kids. And we do this enough, and we're going to have a lot more fat and sick adults, which we already have plenty of those. The number one killer today is heart disease, and cancer is close behind. I mean, it should not be that way. We live in the most affluent society in the world. We have more abundance than ever, and we're dying as a result of that abundance because we aren't understanding our biology and we aren't understanding how the food we eat affects us. We need to get down to the basics. We need to be able to ignore most of the diet dogma, and we need to be able to do things that are going to optimize our health for the long run. Like, that's what it matters. Optimizing our health for the long run and then teaching those skills to our children. And that's what I'm trying to do here at the Ancestral Mind, is to dispel a lot of the dogma and the nonsense and a lot of the confusion and come down to the basics and focus on human biology. From there, we can build. And from there, we're going to have way more enlightened, skeptical, rational people that are going to ask the right questions, and they're going to test their nutrition, eating, and recommendations for themselves. N=1, for example. Well, I need to do a whole video on that, right? But it's the importance of testing for yourself. That's how we're going to change things, because things are bad right now. They're bad and they're getting worse. I don't see them getting any better. The internet is definitely bringing awareness to some things, but the problem with the internet is attention is so siloed, and there's so many things competing for your attention that in a lot of cases, some of the not great advice is getting more exposure than the good advice and the things based on reality and based on facts and based on science. Plant-based being one of those examples, right? So let's get into today's video. Short and sweet, just try to give you some better ways to think about diet, nutrition, and some of those trigger words and those things that these marketers and these other people are using that are trying to dupe you. I want to arm you with information so that you can see through that and arm you with the questions that you should be asking. Let's get to it. Okay, so the first thing that any diet tries to do is it's going to have a name. Keto, paleo, primal, plant-based, vegan, vegetarian. I've even seen the Virgin diet. I've seen the South Beach diet. I've seen, obviously, Atkins Zone. There's so many, right? There's a new one coming out every day. Plant paradox-based diet. I understand why they're doing this. And in some cases, this isn't always a bad thing. Like, we have to be able to understand what we're talking about. And for some people, the simplicity of saying, I follow this diet, or I'm doing a Whole30, for example. Like, there are merits to that because it helps people understand the things they should and shouldn't do. There are certain guidelines. As much as this can be an okay thing or a good thing, and it can help people, it can also be very dangerous, because then you get into a lot of the us versus them. And that's what I see a lot in diet dogma and in debate today, is it's this camp versus that camp. It's a focus on what makes us different than you. Instead, and we'll talk about this in the next point, we should be talking about where are the things the same? Where's that? So we got a big circle here, Venn diagram, I believe it's called. And in the middle, the things that are the same, right? Things are different, things are that. And maybe I'll draw like a circle or put an image up. And in the middle's what's the same. That's where we want to spend most of our time. Because guess what? We're all humans. And humans is a species of animal in the animal kingdom. And any other species in the animal kingdom is easy to say that's a cow's natural diet. That is a horse's natural diet. That is a gorilla's natural diet. Yet for humans, for many reasons, it's very hard for us to say I mean, it's easy for me to say, and it's easy for a lot of people to actually know what they're talking about to say, but it's hard for most people to understand, and someone like a doctor to be able to say this or whatever, because it requires a broad understanding of biology and our ancestral paths, and there's this obsession with like research or whatever, but it's like you could literally, for example, go in the forest and find an animal and observe it for a while, which is what like biologists do, and then easily ascertain what the natural diet is for that species. You just observe it in nature. We can't really do that today other than when we can observe hunter-gatherers. And then we can look at, well, what do these people eat? And what are some of the first principles of the foods they're eating? Not exactly what are the foods they're eating, because there's different climates, there's different peoples, there's different genetics, there's a lot of variables here. And humans moved to the top of the food chain because we were able to adapt to a lot of different environments. We can eat a lot of different foods. And even more so, humans can go periods of time without food, which is why fasting is good for you. And then we can go for periods of time on very specific foods, without B vitamins, for example. We can go for a period of time, which is what vegans tend to be able to do. They can usually go a couple of years because you have B vitamins in the liver and other things in fat that is stored that can be released as the body needs it. This is all survival mechanisms for Homo sapiens. This is how Homo sapiens moved to the top of the food chain. And we moved all around the world. We have been observed inhibiting almost every part of nature. I mean, you even have the Inuit that live in harsh, cold climate regions with robust health because they fish a lot and they hunt seals and they eat lots and lots of animal products. And then you have island people that, like, for example, the Kitavans that eat about 70% of their sweet potatoes, or they used to, of course, before Western influence. 70% of their calories came from carbs in the form of a yam that they found on their island, and the rest was coconut and fish and etc. You can see those two different people that I use as examples often because they're almost stark opposite. Eskimo eat almost no carbs. They eat literally hardly any carbs. Mostly meat, a little bit of seaweed, and that's it. That's the bulk of their diet. And then you have the Kitavans, or the Ketavans, I need to figure out how to pronounce that, to be honest, and they eat 70% of their calories from a complex starch, which is a yam-like tuber. It's no wonder that there's so much confusion, because people can look at both of those examples and basically ignore certain bits of the data, pull out cherry pick certain parts of the data, and then use it to say, oh, high carb is better, or no carb is better. Well, it's not as simple as that. And that is really what you get with a lot of the problem with diet advice today, is it's about us versus them. It's about my diet versus your diet and how I'm different than you as a way to market, brand it, etc. And for some cases, to sell products, right? Which obviously anytime there's a commercial aspect and a commercial incentive, you're gonna have some suspect things, right? Look at the medical establishment, look at the pharmaceutical establishment, look at the food industry, etc. Okay, so those are the two really big things, and there's a couple more, but then we're going to get into like kind of how to think about this and the questions you should be asking yourself. So let's get to it. Okay, so the other thing that people get wrapped up in, even in a lot of diets, I think they do this okay. I think a lot of diets do still try to focus on some of the first principles of nutrition. So what are first principles? Well, if you've followed Elon Musk and everything he's done, he's very big on first principles. It's about reducing things down to the things that we know for sure. For example, the famous example that he used was building SpaceX. He asked himself the question, how much actual atoms of material and metals, etc., go into building a rocket? And what is the cost of those materials if you were to just have them in big clumps laying on the ground? And then what's the cost to take those materials and kind of fashion them into a rocket using people and machines, etc.? And what he found was that it did not add up to the average cost of a rocket. It was something like 70 to 100 million is what it cost to build a rocket and launch it out of gravity. The launch might have been more, don't quote me on that. I do know that it was something like, it was 50 to 100 million to build a rocket, and even some of the used ones, I think he was trying to find a used one for about 10 million. Whatever it was, he did the math and found a first principle of rocketry, which was, the first principle is, how much material does it take? Right? That's the baseline. How much does that material cost? And then how much fuel does it cost to get out of gravity? These are all things he talked about. What he found was the rocket industry was all these companies, this aerospace industry, that would provide parts for the rocket. Well, guess what? Every company has to make profit. Otherwise, they don't stay in business. So if he's buying thousands of parts from thousands of companies and suppliers, he's going to be paying profit on every single one of those. Something as simple as a screw that is a very unique screw that he has to get from one company. So what he thought is, what if I took the raw materials and I built it in-house so I didn't have to pay for the profit of all these other companies, and we could get the launch down to the lowest cost possible, and then I could disrupt this industry, which was a kind of a defense-based industry. There was these heavy-duty contracts and contractors and a lot of politics around it and a lot of favoritism, etc. Well, he wanted to disrupt that. It had to first start with doing things in-house and not basically playing the aerospace game. So that is what first principles are about. It's about boiling things down to the absolute basics, the truisms, the 1 + 1 = 2, the things that we can all agree on. And really, if we brought this idea and this thinking to politics, if we brought it to education, if we brought it to healthcare, if we brought it to the food industry, we would make massive strides. But first principles thinking does not come easy. It's usually not the most cost effective, at least in the beginning. It requires a lot of innovation to do this, right? And there's a lot of things that have been built up by ignoring first principles that are in place to make it so that innovation can be stifled, and you don't really want to think that way, like food industry and healthcare, all these things I talked about, for example, okay? How do we apply this to food and diet and nutrition? Well, ask yourself, what are the things about nutrition that, in all the research you've done or all the reading and exposure you've done, the things that you think are true? Because most people watching this can probably make out a list of the foods they should eat, the quantities they should probably eat it in, the ranges, and the things they shouldn't. And all of you have an intuition about the things that you're eating that aren't good for you because you can eat it and feel. You eat it and listen to your body. The first principles, though, of human nutrition, as far as what I believe it to be and what all the research I've done, also what kind of is the epicenter of most diets, it's going to be based on eating whole, real foods as close to nature as possible with as minimal processing as possible, with nothing artificial or fake. So you have highly processed food on one end, full of tons of ingredients that have been mistreated, and then you have something like organic mustard seed. This is literally just ground mustard seed, certified organic, no pesticides. As far as spices go, this is as close to nature as possible, right? And it's a brand I trust, so it's even better. And then you have something like this that has all these ingredients, literally like 35 right here, and you have no idea how they're treated. You have no idea where they come from. You have no idea what the suppliers are doing to these ingredients, because this company probably just gets those suppliers and then makes it and creates this product, right? And we know for sure that we wouldn't have eaten this in nature. This doesn't grow in trees. You can't find it in the wild. Yet you can actually find mustard seeds in the wild. That is the big first principle that I wouldn't say diets ignore, but most people get sucked into things that don't matter, talking about high carb, low carb, this, that, or whatever, and they're ignoring the big, huge elephant in the room that actually matters. Quality of ingredients based on a species appropriate diet. So human beings are species. We would have eaten food in the wild because we know this for sure. We have observed hunter-gatherers. We can go back. We can look at research, etc. Humans ate real food from nature before we started farming. These are foods that are byproduct of farming. These are highly refined processed foods. Usually grains at the base have things like refined sugarcane, refined salt even, highly processed vegetable oil. This is food our ancestors would have never eaten. So let's agree on that, right? There's the big first principle. Real whole food does better for the human being. Nobody can dispute that. Nobody can debate that. Then you can get into like high carb, low carb, high fat, low fat, high protein, low protein, etc. But then you have to ask yourself, what is most appropriate for our species and what it would have done? Our ancestors in the wild would not have eaten a lot of carbs. This is just the way it is. You don't have mass rows of corn and soybean and wheat and these things that require lots of processing, lots of pesticides to grow, especially in that kind of quantity. We weren't doing that until we started farming. The bulk of human existence, we lived as hunter-gatherers. So the first principle is whole real food, and then what is available in the wild before the advent of agriculture. That is the really big idea here. That is, those two things is all you really need. It will tell you that you should probably not be eating things that are highly refined, highly palatable, and highly processed. You should probably not be eating a lot of carbohydrates, especially in the form of white starches and sugar, right? Because you would not have found that in nature in abundance at all. You should probably be eating a lot of animal products, a lot of plants, a lot of nuts and seeds, tubers, things that you can find in the wild, and that we've observed modern day hunter-gatherers doing before influence of Western culture and industrialized food. Really, you have this little center of these first principles, and that's all you really need to focus on. Yet most people get sucked into all these different diets and these labels and these different things, and they completely ignore the center. Is it real food? Is it quality? Are they whole, real, good ingredients? Did you prep them at home, or did you let a corporation cook for you? You know, did you let who knows what go on in the restaurant in the back and the fryer and the oils they use and all these things? You have no idea what they did. Are you trusting them? Or are you going home and you're preparing the ingredients yourself and controlling every aspect of the meal that you're eating? Do you know your producers? Are you getting in touch with local farmers that are producing food with respect to ingredients and with respect to the environment? These are the questions that most diets are kind of skirting around because they want to talk about us versus them. They want to be able to brand their diet. Maybe they want to sell products or courses or whatever. I'm telling you that if you just focus on the first principles and then use common sense in conjunction with testing for yourself, maybe you're an athlete. Maybe you increase your protein and fat and you see if you can become a fat burner, right, versus doing a higher carb. Maybe you try doing some more carbs from white rice or sweet potatoes and yams, maybe even white potatoes. Things that are historically okay for the most part for humans, right? Test that out. Does that work for you? Do you not feel good? Do you lose body fat? Is your performance better? Do you get leaner? These are all things that matter. It comes down to the human individual. Everyone's metabolism, everyone's hormonal profile, everyone's gut microbiome is going to be different. You have to test for yourself, but you have to test the things that are based on first principles. That circle I talked about. The Venn diagrams of every diet ever. And then in the middle, where they all overlap, whole foods, real foods based on human biology. And that is what most diets ignore. Ask yourself questions about food quality instead of quantity. Too many people focus on quantity. How many carbs? How many proteins? How many fats? What are my macros? That stuff doesn't matter if you don't have the quality quotient down. And when you have the quality quotient down, when you have that figured out, and when that's your focus, the rest of the stuff, I'm telling you, the rest of the stuff figures itself out. Your body is more intuitive than your consciousness in your brain. Your subconscious knows more than what you can articulate. Listen to your body, eat things, test them, and it will tell you everything you need to know. So that's going to be it for today's video. I hope you like that. Make sure you like and subscribe. Turn that little bell on. I'm going to be putting out a lot more videos on nutrition, real food eating, ancestral health, dispelling the dogmas of the food industry and the pharmaceutical. I'm going to be doing some response videos to some of the common misconceptions and some of the just real nonsense people put out there, whether that is keto, paleo, primal, plant-based. There's a lot to cover. There's a lot of dispelling that needs to be done, and I'm hoping to be able to do that for you so that you can be a more educated consumer and you can ask better questions of the recommendations you follow or the ingredients you buy or whatever. Okay, so I'm here to help you do that. My name is Colin. Again, thanks for watching, and drop some comments below about some of the things that you see in the diet wars that maybe you want covered or that confuse people or the way you see it in your perspective. I really want to hear from more people below. I want to hear what you want to see. I want to hear kind of what your thought process is. I'm always up for a good debate. I don't shy away from that. There's nothing wrong with that. Let's just kind of keep it civil. We don't need a name call. If you believe in this and that or whatever, well, if we can discuss it civilly, we're going to have strengthened our belief system, right? And or at least have a good question to ask that maybe brings some self-awareness to us. And that's going to be it for today. So again, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.